Imagine dedicating 10 years of your life, not to a career, not to a passion, but to fighting a single, crushing injustice. This isn't just my story, it's a testament to how far one person will go to reclaim what's rightfully theirs when the system fails them. Prepare to witness the emotional toll and the ultimate pursuit of truth that defined a decade. The letter arrived on a Tuesday in February 2013, delivered to my small apartment in Toronto's Junction neighborhood. I remember the snow was falling softly outside my window, coating the street in that pristine white that makes the city feel clean and hopeful. That hope evaporated the moment I opened the envelope. Bennett and Morrison LLP, representing Northstar Technologies, my former employer. The words swam before my eyes. Notice of legal action for breach of non-compete agreement and misappropriation of trade secrets. I had left Northstar 6 months earlier to start my own software consulting business. I had reviewed my employment contract with a lawyer from Legal Aid Ontario. I had been careful not to contact any Northstar clients for the mandatory cooling-off period. I had done everything by the book. Yet according to this letter, I had stolen proprietary code, client databases, and methodology worth $3 million. They were seeking full damages plus an injunction to shut down my business immediately. The accusations were fiction. The code they claimed I stole? I had never had access to it. The client database? I had built my client list through networking events and LinkedIn connections. The methodology? Standard industry practices anyone could learn from a textbook. But none of that mattered. Because Northstar had money, lawyers, and a determination to crush any competition before it could take root. My first call was to James Park, a solo practitioner in intellectual property law who had helped me review my contract before leaving Northstar. His office was above a Korean restaurant on Bloor Street, his rates reasonable for a recent graduate trying to build her own firm. "This is intimidation," James said, scanning the complaint during our emergency meeting. "Classic slap suit. They're afraid you'll succeed and they're trying to scare you into closing up shop. We'll file a response, show you haven't violated anything, and request costs. This should be resolved within a year, maybe 18 months. 18 months became 2 years. 2 years became 5. 5 years became a decade-long nightmare that consumed my entire adult life. The problem wasn't facts or evidence. The problem was resources. Northstar had an in-house legal team and unlimited funds for outside counsel. They could file motion after motion, each one costing me thousands in legal fees to respond to. They requested document production that required me to spend weeks compiling files. They scheduled examinations for discovery in Vancouver when I lived in Toronto, forcing me to pay for flights and hotels. Every tactic was designed to bleed me dry, and it worked. My consulting business, which had landed 3 solid contracts in its first 6 months, collapsed within a year. Potential clients Googled my name and found articles about the lawsuit. "We can't risk working with someone facing theft allegations," they'd say, their apologetic voices doing nothing to pay my rent. By the end of year 2, I had burned through my savings. By year 3, I had moved back in with my parents in Scarborough, a humiliating regression at 35 years old. By year 4, I was working overnight shifts at a warehouse in Mississauga to pay James's legal fees. My girlfriend Sarah tried to understand. But how do you explain to someone that you can't plan a future because you're trapped fighting ghosts? Our conversations became dominated by the case. Our rare date nights were spent in the library at the University of Toronto, where I could access legal databases for free to help James with research. "Maybe you should settle," Sarah suggested one night in 2016, her voice gentle but firm. "They've offered to drop everything if you admit to minor violations and sign a 5-year non-compete for Ontario." "That would destroy any chance I have of rebuilding my career," I said, exhausted. "And I didn't do anything wrong." "But this is destroying you anyway," she replied, and I saw the frustration in her eyes. "You're not the person I fell in love with anymore. You're just this lawsuit." She left 3 weeks later. I couldn't blame her. I barely recognized myself either. But I couldn't settle. Not just because of pride, though pride was certainly part of it. The real reason was buried deep in the discovery documents I had spent hundreds of hours reviewing. In year 3 of the litigation, while examining the metadata on files Northstar claimed I had stolen, I noticed something impossible. The documents showed they had been accessed from an IP address registered to Northstar's Ottawa office on March 15, 2013. But on that date, I had been in Montreal at a tech conference with hotel receipts, conference registration, and a dozen witness statements to prove it. I couldn't have accessed those files. Someone at Northstar had. When I showed James, his expression shifted from curiosity to something darker. "If they knowingly fabricated evidence, that's serious." But proving they did it deliberately versus claiming it was an error, that's going to be difficult and expensive. How expensive? He hesitated. We need a digital forensics expert. Someone who can analyze the full technical picture. That's probably $50,000 minimum. I thought about my parents, retired on fixed incomes, helping me pay rent. I thought about the warehouse shifts that were destroying my back. I thought about the life I could have if I just walked away. Then I thought about the IP address in Ottawa, and the careful, deliberate way someone had built a case against me before I had even resigned. Let's find out what they're hiding, I said. The investigation became my obsession. James connected me with Dr. Yuki Chin, a digital forensics expert at the University of Waterloo. She agreed to work at a reduced rate after hearing my story, billing only for her direct hours and waiving her usual consultation fees. Within 3 months, Dr. Chin uncovered a pattern that made my hands shake when I read her report. The files Northstar claimed I stole had been accessed, modified, and copied from multiple IP addresses within their Ottawa and Toronto offices over a 6-week period before my resignation. The timestamp evidence suggested someone had been systematically building a case against me. This wasn't opportunistic, Dr. Chin explained during a video call. Someone knew you were leaving and created evidence to ensure you couldn't compete effectively. The technical sophistication suggests it was done by someone with administrative access to your systems. The revelation terrified me because it meant Northstar wouldn't back down easily when confronted. I was right. When James filed a motion revealing our forensic findings and accusing Northstar of fabricating evidence, they responded with fury. Their lawyers filed a counter-motion claiming our analysis was flawed, our expert biased, and requesting sanctions against both James and me for making scandalous and unsupported allegations. The judge, Justice Patricia Moreau of the Ontario Superior Court, seemed skeptical of everyone. She scheduled a hearing for 4 months later and warned both parties she was concerned about the length and acrimony of this proceeding. Those 4 months were the darkest period of my life. My father had a stroke in 2017, brought on partially by the stress of watching me fight this endless battle. My mother, caring for him, looked 10 years older than she had when the lawsuit started. I felt crushing guilt knowing my stubbornness had contributed to their suffering. I visited them every evening after my warehouse shift, helping my mother with my father's physical therapy exercises. He couldn't speak clearly anymore, but one night he gripped my hand and managed to say, "Truth matters." Those 2 words kept me going. The hearing in October 2018 was a turning point. Dr. Chin testified for an entire day, methodically presenting evidence that I could not have accessed the files Northstar claimed I stole. She demonstrated how the documents had been manipulated to appear as if they had been downloaded to an external drive I had never owned. But the critical moment came from an unexpected source. During discovery, James had subpoenaed employment records for Northstar's IT department. One name stood out: Kevin Harding, a senior systems administrator who had been terminated shortly after my lawsuit began. James tracked Kevin to a small tech company in Halifax. After initial reluctance, Kevin agreed to provide an affidavit. His statement was devastating. Kevin explained that he had been approached by Northstar's VP of Operations, Michael Chin, and instructed to create a digital trail showing I had accessed and downloaded sensitive files. Chin had framed it as a security measure, claiming they needed evidence for insurance purposes in case I tried to steal clients. I thought I was protecting the company, Kevin wrote in his affidavit. I didn't realize they were planning to fabricate a lawsuit. When I understood what was happening, I objected, and that's when they fired me. When James presented Kevin's affidavit at the hearing, the courtroom fell silent. I watched Northstar's lead counsel, a woman named Catherine Winters, confer urgently with her team. Michael Chin, sitting in the gallery, looked like he wanted to disappear. Justice Moreau's expression hardened. She adjourned the hearing and called both legal teams into chambers. I stood in the courthouse hallway for 2 hours, my heart pounding. James emerged looking cautiously optimistic. "They want to settle," he said. "Full dismissal with prejudice, acknowledgement that the evidence was fabricated, and compensation for legal fees and damages." How much? $1.2 million. Plus a public statement clearing your name. It sounded like a fortune. But it barely covered my legal fees, my lost income over 6 years, and the toll on my health and family. Still, it was vindication. The settlement finalized in early 2019. Northstar issued a brief press release acknowledging irregularities in evidence gathering and wishing me success. Michael Chin resigned quietly. Kevin Harding was never charged, though his career never recovered. The money helped me rebuild. I paid off debts, helped my parents hire better care for my father, and tried to restart my consulting practice. But the industry had moved on. The clients I once knew had found other consultants. My 6-year absence was too long. More painfully, my father passed away in 2020, never fully recovering from his stroke. At his funeral, my mother squeezed my hand and said, "He was proud you fought." But I wondered if he would have preferred I had settled early and been present for his final years. It's been several years since the settlement. I run a modest consulting practice, teaching coding to newcomers at a community center in Scarborough, and speaking occasionally about litigation abuse. I help 2 other people facing similar suits sharing what I learned. Last month, a journalist from the Toronto Star called about writing a piece on corporate intimidation tactics. She asked the question everyone asks, "Do you regret fighting?" I thought carefully before answering. I regret what it cost. My relationship, my father's final years, my health. But I don't regret fighting. Because if I hadn't, I would have spent my life wondering if I could have won if truth mattered. That doubt would have destroyed me worse than the fight did. The article ran last week, portraying my victory as Pyrrhic, technically successful but practically costly. Reading it, I felt strange closure. My decade-long fight was now a cautionary tale. Maybe that's what justice looks like in the real world. Not a triumphant restoration of everything lost, but a hard-won acknowledgement of truth that costs more than you wanted to pay. I keep the settlement agreement framed in my small office, not as a trophy but as a reminder. Fighting injustice is necessary but never free. Truth matters, but it doesn't heal all wounds. You can win and still lose, and somehow both things can be true simultaneously. Would I do it again? On difficult days, when I'm alone remembering my father's stroke or Sarah's departure, I'm not sure. But on better days, when I help someone navigate their own legal nightmare, or when I wake knowing I don't carry the weight of a lie I never told, the answer is yes. Because for 10 years, I fought for something bigger than my comfort. I fought for the principle that truth matters, that power shouldn't go unchallenged, and that one person, even outmatched and outspent, can demand accountability. The system may be imperfect. Justice may be expensive and slow. The ending may not be traditionally happy. But I fought. And in a world that rewards those who surrender, who take the easy path, who let injustice slide by unchallenged, that has to mean something. It has to.